Yo, Amateur Lore here. So with today being Valentine's Day, I wanted to drop a video for the viewers not getting any box today. Don't worry, neither am I. Only box I'm getting is watching dudes box out on defense. But yeah, we already covered the Big 10, so here's every team in the Big 12's deepest tournament run. A like and a sub would be appreciated. These videos do take a while to make, but yeah, let's jump right in. Alright, so the first team up in the Big 12 is the Arizona State Sun Devils. This program is probably the definition of just average, as they never do anything too crazy, but at the same time, they're never a bad team, just pretty average. So it should be no surprise the Sun Devils have never made a natty or made it to the Final Four. However, I will mention that this program has been to 3 Elite Eights, which is going to take us to Arizona State's deepest tournament run, which would happen back during the 1974/75 college basketball season, where a dominant 22-3 Sun Devil squad led by Coach Ned Wolk would win their opening game of the tournament against Alabama in a close one, 97-94. In their next matchup against UNLV, the Sun Devils would again win by 3, 84-81, sending them to the Elite Eight, where they would face off against the juggernaut UCLA Bruins. UCLA would put an end to Arizona State's tournament run, defeating them 89-75, ending the Sun Devils' deepest tournament run to date. You know it's only logical that after Arizona State, we talk about Arizona. And man, these two programs are night and day when it comes to basketball, as the Wildcats have made it to 4 Final Fours and have won 1 national championship, as well as producing countless first-round NBA draft picks. And this is off topic, but I lost so much bread on a parlay because of that half-court shot Caleb Love made to send the game into overtime against Iowa State. Anyway, for Arizona's deepest men's basketball tournament run, we have to take a look at the year they won the Natty, all the way back in the 1996/97 season, when this loaded squad, who had 5 future NBA players on it, most notably Mike Bibby and Jason Terry, would enter the tournament with a 19-9 record as the 4th seed. In their first 2 games of the tournament, they would take down South Alabama 65-57 and the College of Charleston 73-69, sending them to the Sweet 16, where they would face off against the first-seeded Kansas Jayhawks. This game would be tight the entire way through, but a 21-point night from Mike Bibby would help push the Wildcats over Kansas 85-82. The rest of the tournament would be one long ride for Arizona, as they would barely escape Providence in overtime, winning 96-92, taking down North Carolina in the Final Four 66-58, and finally to finish off the Natty run, another overtime thriller, winning 84-79 to bring home Arizona's lone basketball Natty. Next up in the Big 12, we have the BYU Cougars, and I have no idea why in my head I expected a little more accolades from this school, but I guess that's just because BYU is just a good all-around school when it comes to sports. So I don't know, I thought they would have at least made it to a Final Four, but no, that's not the case, as this program has never made it to the Final Four, but they have made it to an Elite Eight, which happened all the way back during the 1980/81 college basketball season, where a 22-6 6-seeded BYU Cougars squad coached by Frank Arnold and led by future NBA guard Danny Ainge, who was averaging a nasty 24.4 points per game, would come into the tourney defeating the Ivy League boys Princeton 60-51, and then after that would blow out UCLA 78-55, riding that momentum all the way into the Sweet 16, where they would barely escape the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 51-50, advancing to the Elite Eight, where they would get blown out by the Virginia Cavaliers 74-60, putting an end to BYU's longest tournament run to date. From Utah, we travel to Texas for our next team up in the Big 12, the Baylor Bears. This program has been to 3 Final Fours and won 1 national championship, which was actually not too long ago. And I know Baylor isn't known as some top basketball program, but ever since Coach Scott Drew took over the team in 2005, Baylor has consistently made the tournament and been ranked as the #1 team in the country 3 different times during his tenure. So for the Bears' deepest tournament run, we have to take a look at their Natty run, which happened during the 2020/21 college basketball season, where a 28-2 Baylor basketball team led by 3 future NBA players, most notably Davion Mitchell, would enter the tournament as a #1 seed, scrapping their way to the Natty, winning by double digits in their first 2 games against Hartford 79-55 and Wisconsin 76-53. In the Sweet 16, Baylor would see themselves matched up against the Villanova Wildcats. A 14-point night from Davion Mitchell and a 16-point outburst from Adam Flagler would be enough to push the Bears over Villanova 62-51. Baylor would win against Arkansas 81-72, sending them to their 3rd Final Four in program history, where they would match up against the Houston Cougars. Baylor was on fire this game, blowing out the Cougars 78-59, but one blowout wasn't good enough, as they would nearly do the same thing against Gonzaga in the national championship game, winning 86-70, bringing home Baylor's only basketball national title to date. Our next team up in the Big 12 is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, while as of late this program hasn't been too relevant, as they haven't made the tournament in the last 5 years, I will mention though that while I'm recording this video, they're currently on the bubble, so hopefully they can make it in. Anyway, while this program hasn't been too good as of late, historically the Bearcats have had some success, going to 6 Final Fours and winning 2 national championships. So for Cincinnati's deepest tournament run, we have to take a look at one of their 2 natties, which came during the 1961/1962 college basketball season, where with the 24-2 record led by Coach Ed Jucker would cruise by their first 2 teams in the tournament, winning 64-46 against Creighton and 73-46 against the Colorado Buffaloes. In their semifinal game against the UCLA Bruins, they wouldn't run away with the game and win by double digits, as it would take a 36-point, 19-rebound game from Paul Hogue to put the Bearcats on top of the UCLA Bruins 72-70, sending Cincinnati to the national championship for the 2nd year in a row, where they would face off against their in-state rivals Ohio State, winning in dominant fashion 71-59 to bring home this program's 2nd basketball national championship. From one new team in the Big 12, we rotate over to a team who was in the Big 12, then moved to the Pac-12, but is now back in the Big 12, the Colorado Buffaloes. Unlike their football team, the men's basketball team hasn't made too much noise in the college basketball world, although they did beat my Gators in the tournament last year. And even though their basketball history isn't anything crazy, they have been to 2 Final Fours, so we're going to be taking a look at one of those 2 for Colorado's deepest tournament run. For that, we have to go all the way back to the 1954/55 college basketball season, where a 16-5 Buff squad led by Coach B.B. Lee would attempt to run the gauntlet and claim a natty. Their first 2 games in the tournament would be all business, as they would take down Tulsa 69-59 and Bradley 93-81. In the national semifinals, Colorado would face off against a loaded San Francisco squad and would lose 62-50 to the Bill Russell-led Dons, putting an end to Colorado's longest tournament run to date. But hey, they would win the 3rd place game against Iowa 75-74. Next, we have one of the most successful basketball programs in the Big 12, the Houston Cougars. This program kind of has a weird thing going on. They were elite in the early 80s, going to 3 straight Final Fours, and then they kind of fell off for a while. But ever since Coach Kelvin Sampson took over this program, they have once again claimed their spots as one of the big dogs in the college basketball world, going on deep March Madness runs for 4 straight seasons. And with the way they look this year, they might be in store for another one. However, even with all this current success, for Houston's deepest run, we have to go all the way back to the 1983/84 college basketball season, when a 25-4 second-seeded Houston squad led by Coach Guy Lewis and NBA legend Hakeem Olajuwon would enter the tournament looking for their 3rd straight Final Four appearance and hopefully winning the natty. As in the season before, they would be upset in the national championship game by the NC State Wolfpack. In the Cougars' first 2 games of the tourney, they would handle their opponents, defeating Louisiana Tech 77-69 and Memphis 78-71. In the Sweet 16, Houston would win by 5 against Wake Forest, making the Final Four for the 3rd season in a row. And led by a 17-point night from Michael Young, the Cougars would advance past Virginia in a nail-biter 49-47. For the 2nd year in a row, Houston was in the natty, and nothing would change as they would lose to a pretty stacked Georgetown team 84-75. Iowa State kind of surprised me while looking into their history, as I can't lie, I'm kind of impressed with how consistent this program is when it comes to making the men's basketball tournament, as you can pretty much guarantee the Cyclones will make the tournament. They might not make it far, but they're still going to make it. In this program's history, they've only been to 1 Final Four, but that happened way back in the 40s, and that's right at the cutoff, so we're going to have to look at a more recent one, which takes us to the 1999/2000 college basketball season, where Iowa State, led by Coach Larry Eustachy, would enter the tournament as the 2nd seed with a record of 29-4. The Cyclones would start their tournament off on fire, winning by double digits in their first 2 games, taking down Central Connecticut 88-78 and Auburn 79-60. No cap, this Iowa State squad was looking like it was the one, as in the Sweet 16 against UCLA, the Cyclones would keep the streak of double-digit wins alive, winning 80-56 against the Bruins, advancing to the Elite 8 where they would face off against the Michigan State Spartans. The double-digit winning streak would end here. Actually, every streak would end here, as the Spartans would take down the Cyclones 75-64, ending Iowa State's March Madness run. Next up, we got one of the blue bloods of the college basketball world, the Kansas Jayhawks. And does anybody here remember the ESPN 30 for 30 No Place Like Home, where this Jayhawk fan went through hell and back to bring the rules of basketball back to Kansas? Man, there wasn't anything like ESPN 30 for 30s. They had nothing but bangers when I was a kid. Comment your favorite 30 for 30 down below. Mine has to be Winning Time, Reggie Miller versus the New York Knicks. Back to the Jayhawks. This program has been to 16 Final Fours and has won 4 national championships, with 2 of them coming in the last 20 years. So obviously for their deepest run, we're going to be looking at their most recent natty, which actually only happened a couple years ago during the 2021/2022 college basketball season. This Kansas squad was loaded, with countless top 100 players and 3 future NBA players, most notably to me, NBA champion Chris Braun. Kansas would enter the tournament coached by Bill Self and would take the 1st seed with a record of 28-6. The Jayhawks would win against Texas Southern and Creighton in their first 2 games, sending them to the Sweet 16, where they would match up against Providence. Kansas would escape a close one 66-61 and would play much better in the Elite 8, taking down Miami 76-50. In the Final Four, Kansas would also blow out Villanova 81-65, sending them to the national championship game where they would finish off the run, taking down North Carolina 72-69. From Kansas, we go to Kansas for the next team up, the Kansas State Wildcats. And if any of you are wondering, no, I'm not a Kansas State fan, even though my profile pic might suggest otherwise. I'm a Gators fan. Kansas State has been pretty good at basketball, as this program has been to 4 Final Fours in the Elite 8 14 times. If you're shocked by that number, trust me, I was too. For their deepest run, we're going to have to take a look at one of their Final Four runs, which happened well over 50 years ago. The one we're looking at happened during the 1963/64 college basketball season, where a 19-5 Wildcat squad led by Tex Winter would call their way to the Final Four, winning by 4 against UTEP and by 8 against Wichita State 94-86. In the Final Four versus the Bruins, Kansas State would lose 90-84, and to make things worse, in their 3rd place game, they would lose 190, putting an end to their deepest tournament run to date. Next team up, we have the Oklahoma State Polks, and this program has been pretty consistent and may even surprise some of you with their accolades. They have been to 11 Elite 8, 6 Final Fours, and have won 2 national championships. Now, while the Polks have won 2 national championships, those came right before the cutoff for this video, which is the 1950s. The Cowboys won both of these titles in the 40s, as they actually won titles back-to-back in 1945 and 1946. So for the deepest run, I'm going to be looking at one of their Final Four appearances, with the most recent one coming during the 2004/2005 college basketball season, where a 27-3 second-seeded Polk squad led by Coach Eddie Sutton and NBA champion Tony Allen, would go on a dominant March Madness run, winning their first 2 games of the tournament by double digits, taking down Eastern Washington 75-56 and Memphis 70-53. In the Sweet 16, the Pokes would keep up their high level of play, taking down the 3rd-seeded Pitt Panthers 63-51. The double-digit wins would stop in the Elite Eight, as against the number 1 seeded St. John's Red Storm, the game would go down to the wire, but a 19-point night from John Lucas of the Pokes would be enough to put the Cowboys on top 64-62, punching their ticket to the Final Four, where unfortunately they would lose a close game to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 67-65, putting it into their March Madness run. Next team up is the TCU Horned Frogs. This program doesn't really have much basketball history, as they have never made it to the Final Four and have only made the Elite Eight 1 time. I will mention though, this program has made the tournament the last 3 years, but while I'm recording this video, they're currently looking like they might not make it in this year, so hopefully they can turn it around. Anyway, for the Horned Frogs' deepest tournament run, we have to go all the way back to the 1967-68 college basketball season, where led by Coach Johnny Swaim, a 12-10 TCU squad would sneak their way into the dance, where in their first game they would take down Kansas State 77-72, but that is where their run would end, as in their next game versus the Houston Cougars, they get smacked 103-68, putting it into their tournament. So we're staying in the state of Texas for the next team up in the Big 12, the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who just like the Horned Frogs doesn't have the richest basketball history, but as of late they've really emerged as a pretty good and consistent basketball program, actually making it to the Final Four and playing in the national championship not too long ago, which takes us to the 2018-19 college basketball season, where the 3rd-seeded 26-6 Red Raiders, led by Coach Chris Beard, would go on a pretty dominant tournament run to the Final Four, winning by double digits in every game up until the Elite Eight, winning 72-57 against Northern Kentucky, 78-58 against Buffalo, 63-44 against 2nd-seeded Michigan, and in the Elite Eight, things would slow down just a bit as the game versus Gonzaga would be much closer, but Texas Tech would still pull away, winning by 6, 75-69. Versus Michigan State in the Final Four, a 22-point outburst from Matt Mooney would be more than enough to push the Red Raiders past the Spartans, winning 61-51, advancing Texas Tech to the Natty, where they would face off against the number 1 seeded Virginia Cavaliers. This is where the Red Raiders' run would come to an end, as they would lose 85-77 in the national championship game. This next one is going to be extremely quick, as the UCF Knights haven't done much in the college basketball world, only making the men's basketball tournament 5 times and never making it very deep, so let's get this one done quick. For the Knights' deepest March Madness run, we have to go back to the 2018-2019 college basketball season, where the UCF Knights, led by Coach John Dawkins, would make the tourney as the 9th seed, would win their first game in tournament history against the 8th-seeded VCU Rams 73-58. In their next game, they would come super close to pulling off a huge upset against the 1st-seeded Duke Blue Devils, but would fall just short 77-76, ending the Knights' deepest tournament run to date. Next team up in the Big 12 is a newcomer to the league, the Utah Utes. I was kind of shocked to learn that this program has been to 4 Final Fours and even won a national championship, although I do have to mention that this happened all the way back in the 40s, more specifically during the 1943-44 college basketball season. But that's right at the cutoff line for this video, so we're going to have to look at their next deepest March Madness run, which takes us to the 1997-98 college basketball season, where a 25-3 3rd-seeded Utes squad, led by Coach Rick Majoris, I probably said that wrong, sorry, would attempt to claim Utah's 2nd natty in program history. The Utes' first 2 games of the tournament would be all business, as they would take down San Francisco 85-68 and Arkansas 75-69. The Sweet 16 versus West Virginia would be a nail-biter, but Utah would survive 65-62. Utah's next 2 games would be versus 2 number 1 seeds, and the Utes would go to work, winning 76-51 against Arizona and 65-59 against North Carolina, advancing Utah to the national championship, where they would lose to the Kentucky Wildcats 78-69, putting it into the Utah Utes' deepest tournament run to date besides the year they won the Natty. Alright, for the final team in the Big 12, we have the West Virginia Mountaineers. Once again, we're back with not so much of a dominant basketball program, but one that has been pretty consistent, as they have been a mainstay in the men's basketball tournament for the last 20 years, making one of this program's 2 Final Fours during that window. And since this program only has been to 2 Final Fours, we're going to have to look at their most recent one for this entry, which takes us back to the 2009-2010 college basketball season, where coached by Bob Huggins, the 27-6 West Virginia Mountaineers would look to claim the program's first men's basketball national championship. West Virginia's first 2 games of the tournament would see the Mountaineers playing great ball, as they would defeat Morgan State 77-50 and Missouri 68-59. In the Sweet 16 versus Washington, West Virginia would walk away with a 13-point victory, beating them 69-56, advancing them to the Elite Eight, where they would face off against Kentucky with a trip to the Final Four on the line. West Virginia would stay hot, pulling off the win 73-66, sending the Mountaineers to the Final Four, where they would sadly get blown out by Duke 78-57, putting an end to West Virginia's deepest tournament run to date and the end of this video. If you made it this far, make sure you leave a like and a sub. I'm out.